Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special video we have for you. And in this video, we are going to discuss the Orange County Economic Recovery Task Force meeting that did share guidelines for reopening businesses in Central Florida. And particularly, we are going to cover on the fact that they talked about Walt Disney World and other theme parks in terms of what kind of guidelines they need to follow in order to to have its reopening. And I do want to say with this, these are preliminary guidelines, very preliminary. So we are just at the start of it. Things will continue to change. New information could be released at any point in time between now and when we finish talking about this, and or the day after or the day after. So this is just the information we have right now, some of our thoughts on it, and we are going to leave it at that. And to join me to discuss everything that was released in terms of the Orange County Economic Recovery Task Force, I am joined alongside by Rhino Clavin.
Hello. What a mouthful that task force name is, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it 100% is a mouthful, and I hope I don't have to keep saying it, but I'm sure I will have to at least like 10 more times throughout this, so I really do apologize if I fumble my words around here and there. I do not mean to do so. It is just a lot to take in, but it is a very important topic. So as I said, this task force had their meeting just this morning to discuss initial guidelines for reopening businesses in Central Florida. And some of the details, of course, shared was about the Walt Disney World theme parks, and then hotels, restaurants, and with theme parks, I should also mention, of course, like Universal Orlando, because in the little bullet point that they brought up about it, they made sure to also say that Walt Disney World fell in the large theme parks category along with Universal Orlando. So yeah, that is just a little bit, and they went into it in heavy detail. I know that they also discussed like malls reopening and movie theaters and such. So there's just a ton of information. But of course, we are a website that focuses on planning trips to Walt Disney World and other theme parks. So of course, we're going to try to stay primarily on the portions that would have to do with Walt Disney World and Universal Orlando. So I'm not going to talk about the guidelines for small theme parks, but I do want to bring up what they said in terms of large theme parks. And that is, of course, again, large theme parks includes Disney and Universal. The guidelines that the task force mentioned during the live stream that they had from it, it's tape marking of 6 feet apart in ride/attraction queues, staff to regularly wipe down surfaces at random, and then in phase 1 and 2 of the reopening, staff who are 65 plus are encouraged to stay home, which that is definitely something that is very good to hear. In terms of the mandates, we have all employees required to wear face masks, touchless hand sanitizer at each ticketing entry and turnstiles, touchless hand sanitizer at each ride/attraction entry and exit, temperature checks for staff prior to shift, temperatures above 100.4 degrees must not enter premises, all employees with flu-like symptoms advised to stay home, wipe down of all railings and surfaces after every use, and phase 1 of reopening would see 50% capacity, and phase 2 would see 75% capacity. So again, that is the guidelines in what they say for large theme parks. I need a break from talking now, so I'm going to go ahead and let Rhino get on and talk about what some of the reopening guidelines that they mentioned for hotels and restaurants.
Okay, so we're going to start with hotels, and some of the guidelines they have here is in phase 1, housekeeping services to be limited and allow for minimal guest and employee exposure. Promote, if available, mobile check-in. Housekeeping services only clean upon request or when guests depart. Allow employees to work from home if not playing a critical role in serving guests. Only deliver room service to guest's door. Provide self-parking. Promote social distancing for all guests and staff. Recommend touchless sanitizer at entry. Increase cleaning services, additional sanitation services through cleaning companies. Phase 1 and 2 are going to have staff who are 65 and older encouraged to stay home as well. So those are the guidelines. The mandates for hotels are as follows. All employees required to wear face masks. Hand sanitizer at entry to be in plain visible sight. Temperature check for staff prior to shift. Temp above 100.4 must not enter the premises. All employees with flu-like symptoms will be advised to stay home. Front desk to sanitize themselves on a regular basis. Consistent cleaning of all guest areas. Front desk to utilize sneeze guards. Removal of all all service items in guest rooms to include glassware, coffee cups, etc. Mini bars will not be stocked. Do not offer self-food services. Space pool furniture according to distancing guidelines. Excuse me, I was thinking outer space pool. That was terrible. Door handles, elevator button, and railings will be sanitized regularly. Remove all coffee makers from guest rooms. Remove all guest collateral items except for those that are single use. Sanitize guest keys before and after each use. Sanitize bell carts after each use. And phase 1 and 2 will be no conferences at the hotels. Now, if we move on to the restaurants portions for the guidelines, they have paper and disposable menus. Encourage takeout and online ordering. Touchless sanitizer at entry, and phase 1 and 2 will be staff who are 65 years or older will also be encouraged to stay home. Now, the mandates they have in place right now are hand sanitizer at every table, hand sanitizer at entry to be in plain visible sight, all employees required to wear face masks, temperature checks for staff prior to shift, temperature above 100.4 must not enter the premises, all employees with flu-like symptoms advised to stay home, doors to be wiped regularly. All staff behind counters must wear gloves except for bartenders. Bartenders to sanitize hands after making each drink order. Seated tables to be 6 feet apart. For phase 1, they're going to limit restaurant and bar capacity to 50%. And for phase 2, they're going to limit it to 75%. And there is also a video about this entire meeting if you do want to watch that at some point as well to see them all chatting away.
Yeah, no, they go into a lot more depth in that meeting, of course, than just what we talked about here. So that is available, and I know that many of you don't want to just listen to you don't want to listen to this. You actually want to be able to see it in front of you, and the best way to do that is by clicking in the link that we will have down below this video that will take you directly to that article that we have on the wdwinfo.com about all of these guidelines. So we have it all there in print, so it's easy to read. So I highly recommend going there for extra information on that. And again, I just want to make sure we mention with this that these are preliminary guidelines. And on top of that too, just because they are what is currently on paper, that doesn't mean it's going to stick. In fact, It is very possible that Walt Disney World, Universal Orlando, anyone can actually go above and beyond what they are recommending in these preliminary guidelines. It could be that they say, you know what, this is all great. We like what is being said about these guidelines. However, we want to take it to the next level to ensure that everyone is as safe as possible. So that is something to keep in mind too. While this is what we know that they're looking at is the base guidelines for it, it will most likely be a lot stricter. And with this, we still don't have an exact opening date of Walt Disney World, Universal Orlando, or the other theme parks. I know that everyone does. They want to know when these parks are going to open up. I know I believe I heard in the meeting that Buddy Dyer did mention that with these guidelines and stuff, hopefully they would be able to definitely reopen in June, like all businesses in Central Florida reopen in June. You know, May might be a little strict on that, but June. But in fact, you know, of course, that's when Disney had the free dining promotion. If you had to be canceled before, that's when they had it to start back up again. So I think, you know, it looks like all signs are pointing towards trying to reopen in June, if at all possible. And I know at least one person sent us a little tip that I don't know when this changed, but apparently if you go on Walt Disney World's park operating calendars, it starts showing hours as of May 17th and forward. However, with that, the park hours are clearly, they were all set way back before
Yeah.
this all happened, because it still mentions like fireworks and parades and normal park hours like 9 o'clock to 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and such. So it's, a lot of this information here, it's we still are trying to corral it all together, figure out what could be clues in order to understand this more, and what can just be ignored. But Rhino, in terms of the guidelines, what do you think about them? What do you think needs to be added in terms of the parks reopening?
Well, I think it's a start for sure, but I've said it before that I do think temperature checks don't really do anything for me, because like let's say you have it and and you're an employee and you have it, but you're asymptomatic, you're not going to have a fever or a temperature. But if I come within distance of you or whatever, or, even with social distancing, like I could still end up getting it from you, or you could pass it to somebody else. So I would love to see a thing where maybe at least with the larger theme parks in Central Florida, that they invest in that rapid testing technology somehow to get that involved, where it's like, if not for guests, at least for the safety of their employees. Yeah. So I'd like to know that, because these people, basically when this reopens, it's going to be like, you have to go back to work. So now, I'd get nervous. Like, I don't want anyone to take an unnecessary risk. And so I think that kind of puts a level of a little bit more of a definitive lock on it. And also I think you can trace it if like outbreaks start to happen again or something like that. But yeah, also I am a little concerned about just the word usage here, with the staff who are 65 years and older are encouraged to stay home, because it doesn't say must stay home, should stay home. It says are encouraged to stay home. So I am afraid, I fear, and this is guidelines put forward by a committee, not by the individual parks, like Craig said. And this is the beginning. I'm afraid that there'll be some sort of age bias against people now. And I worry that they'll say, okay, well, we're open now, so you're no longer furloughed if you're not coming to work, you're now unemployed entirely. And so like if you were, working in the theme parks and you're 70 years old, and I worked with a ton of people that were over 65 at Disney World, that I'm concerned about something happening to them down the road, not just in terms of like, safety with the virus, but also in terms of a financial stability as well. It's not fair that you get to that point in your life and we'd boot you. And I don't think that they would. I just worry with this preliminary wordage. That's all. Yeah. Verbiage.
I totally get what you're saying there with the verbiage. So one other thing that I wanted to point out in terms of the mandates, it does say all employees required to wear face masks.
Yeah.
I really would love that to see everyone.
Yeah, I agree.
Including guests as well too. So I think that will eventually be a thing as well too. I think right now for this, it's not necessarily talking about like what's best for the guests here. It's saying what the businesses need to do in terms of reopening. So I think in that terms, that's why it makes sense that saying like all employees are required to wear face masks. But I think it will get to the point too where this is where we could see places like Walt Disney World and Universal Orlando take it to the next level by saying, yes, we are also going to require all guests to wear face masks. So I think that's where this being preliminary guidelines really, we can't take everything so literally in regards to it. And before.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I would, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail you. It was about the face mask, but I think like, from my perspective as a guest who frequents there, I mean, so you're the employee going to work and, let's say they do rapid testing for the employees, which would be great. I think they definitely should offer that free of charge for all their employees for sure. And they aren't going to do that for the guests or whatever. The guests are the ones who are traveling from wherever, and who's you can keep track of your employees' background a little bit better than you can the random person who buys the tickets and comes to your theme park. So, but I'm not looking at a face mask. I'm going to choose to look at that as a positive thing and not yes, it probably will be uncomfortable and weird for a while, but I'm going to look at it as a way like this is an opportunity for theme parks to make it like a fun thing to help the public get into it. Like Disney bounding became this way for adults to kind of wear their costumes in a creative way to theme parks and show that love and pride toward a certain character. And now we can kind of carry that into like with the masks, like having really fun, cool masks. Like, where do you get it? How do you get it? And if they have a chance to start a trend that could be picked up beyond the parks, where it becomes much more easily like digestible in the social settings,
Yeah, I do know. So I know we get a question a lot of times from people out there asking face masks in Florida. Would you do it? Won't you? Well, I think in this terms we can say absolutely I would. Like I am still not used to the heat at all living in Orlando for as many years as I have, almost 10 years now. I'm still not used to the heat. I don't think I ever will, but I've been out grocery shopping, I want to say 4 times now since everything has started. And after the first time is when the entire question of face masks was still kind of up in the air. And after that, every single time I've had a face mask on. And it's hot in Florida. Is it unbearable to wear a face mask? Honestly, it's not nearly as terrible as I thought it would be. And that's even with my glasses on. There is the issue of fogging and such. And yes, it does happen a little bit, but ultimately, the CDC released a photo, a little animation drawing where it's 2 people in face masks saying, I'm protecting myself and you, and I'm protecting myself and you. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, that's, you can't.
Yeah, you think about it like if you and I are having a conversation with each other and only one of us is wearing a face mask and one of us is sick, then there's a really high probability we're going to get the other person sick. But if we're both wearing face masks and one of us is sick, you're cutting that chance down in half, or whatever. Then I don't know the specific numbers, obviously, but you just think about it logically. It's just you're adding an extra barrier, on somebody else. So it's not just about you. It can't all be about me. It has to be about we, right? So it's all like it's you and me. I'm making sure you're okay, but I'm also concerned about myself too,
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And, ultimately, I don't want to be the bad guy when I say this, but if it's a thing where you are too concerned about it being too hot and face masks are being asked to be worn by everyone, you don't have to, you're not being forced to be there. So I know we all want to be there. You just have to kind of look at what you want out of it. Would you rather be in the parks and experiencing it, or would you rather be at home? You have to decide for yourself what is more important.
Think about it like running a marathon. Okay, so when you go to run a marathon, if anyone's ever done this or you haven't done it, they'll have areas when you go in the morning and they are marked off on how the average run time of the person through there. Okay, and so you've trained for this marathon or you're running it for the first time. You don't go to the front of the line where it says 5 minutes, unless you're going to run 5 minutes. So unless you are comfortable with all that comes with it, you go back to an area that you are comfortable. So not everyone can unfortunately go at once. You go in these tiered settings, and that's kind of like going back to do these things that we love is going to be like, unfortunately. And yeah, it's super frustrating because we've all been locked in the house and everyone wants to get out right away, but some of us can't explode out of the door right away. You have to wait. You have to wait a minute and see, and it could be a test and adjust thing. There is the possibility that something could happen that was unforeseen, and we could take 2 steps back. But at least you'll have been okay, I guess, if you didn't push yourself.
So also in terms of the mandates, one of at the bottom, of course, it talked about phase 1 and phase 2 at the 50% capacity followed by 75% capacity. What do you think about this? Do you think that that's fair? Does it seem a little high still in terms of?
I I think it seems high for me, right? Like you and I have been in parks where it's been like 100% capacity, and I think people think they've been in a park when it's 100% capacity, and you haven't, and like 4th of July at Epcot is like 100%, right? Or Christmas Day at Magic Kingdom, things like this, and it's anywhere there's space, there's a body. Okay, so there's a chance that you've been to the park and you think it seems busy, and it might still only be at 50%. So I don't know numbers off the top of my head, but doesn't like Magic Kingdom hold like 80,000 people?
Yeah, it holds a lot.
And so think about that. Like, let's just use that number. Let's just say, and I could be way wrong, but we're just going to use that number. Okay, and they keep it at 50% for that first phase, so that's 40,000 people. But not all rides are probably going to be operating, is my guess, at least. Or you think about it, now you're not all all the way forward, filling all the available space anymore. That verbiage is gone forever, probably. And so, let's talk about Haunted Mansion. You're not going into the stretching room the same way, probably. You're not going into you're 6 back. So think about the length of these lines and how it's going to be avoiding people. I think 50% might be a little generous. I don't know.
Yeah, I that's kind of how I was feeling too. It seemed like it should be a lot less, but I know then the less it is, the more you have to start wondering about, well, if we're really limiting capacity this much, who are the people who get to go in terms of resort guests, annual pass holders? Who is it going to be? Is it going to be a breakdown of so many and in each category? And I'm not even going to get into all those questions.
Well, how many guests to break even too?
Exactly. Yeah.
For operating of the day, electricity, wages, all that stuff,
Yeah. So there's tons of questions in that regard. So we could just keep going down a wormhole into. And I know that there's even been conversations that people have been having about like, well, how do you keep ride vehicles clean in this regards? Do you sanitize each one of them? And I am going to base this as a person who has worked at a theme park before in terms of attractions. And I will just say one thing. It is very, very difficult to clean some ride vehicles up to the point that they are extremely sanitary. I do not want to gross people out with this, but it's just a fact. Like I used to joke
people
about
are farting and spitting in those seats. Come on now.
Well, like I used to work at Universal Orlando. I worked at Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey, and I used to joke for the longest time, and I still do. There is probably not an inch of any of those ride vehicles, unless they just rolled out brand new for the first time. There is not an inch of any of those ride vehicles that has not been thrown up on at some point in time. And I will say that too. It's you try to clean every little piece of it, but you still can't. Sometimes you go at a battle against.
Oh God, I'm gonna start gagging.
I don't want to. I don't want to keep going on like that. But it's just that was my experience working there, and I know not every attraction is the same. Some are easier than others. Like it's just that's how it is. But
well, I think everyone's been on the tram in the morning, right? You've seen how gross those are. Like those are not clean really ever. Not to be rude, but you've seen how the paint goes and everything, and you're all sweating. It's Florida. We're dripping liquids off of our body. But I am just like re-looking at this mandate again, which is interesting to me. So the mandates, I'm going to ask you too, other than the capacity thing, the 2 capacity for phase 1 and phase 2, other than the face masks and like saying the temperature checks, there's nothing different than what shouldn't have already been happening in here, like wiping down stuff. And what concerns me is that the wiping down of stuff is a guideline. It says staff to regularly wipe down surfaces. And this, again, the verbiage at random.
Yeah.
So I think that's more for a guest perspective. So if you don't see somebody doing all the time, they can be like, oh, we wipe them down at random. And I'm like, well, that, but again, like Craig just said, functionality of an attraction, how can you be doing that after every cart comes through? Yep. And then if you have 40,000 people in your park, how is every ride not 3-hour wait?
Yeah. And they can do, they can do some things like some attractions, they are able to slow down they're able to slow down in order to do stuff like clean, or in the case that it's normally used for, like loading guests who need extra time and extra assistance getting on an attraction. Like we've all been on Haunted Mansion or Spaceship Earth when it's slowed down. Then the next thing too is you have to look at, well, does putting in procedures like that really start to interrupt the entire ride experience for the people who are on it, because you're constantly slowing down or stopping. And that's, again, another thing that I don't want to dive into. So it might be a system where it's easier to open attractions that aren't on a continuous system like that, stuff that, comes into a station and they can make sure that it pulls in, they have enough time to clean real quick and then move it forward and go on from there. But it's, there's still so many questions.
Yeah, because I mean, essentially, none of these parks were designed for something like this to happen either. So like I always come back to saying that Haunted Mansion is probably the perfect ride that will still be able to operate well enough, because you'll have your individual dune buggies, and if you load every 3 dune buggies some sort of color, whatever, but that ride just is lucky. A lot of these other rides weren't designed like this, to have had that moment, like you said. So it's a test and adjust process too.
Yeah. And with that, like, some things are probably going to happen, kind of what you mentioned with like pre-shows and stuff. It might be that situation where pre-shows are off and everyone just walks straight through, and you miss out on that. But ultimately, what's more important? Is it more important to hit the pre-show, or to be able to still experience the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, if you will, with still being able to get the actual attraction? I'd be happier to skip all pre-shows and still have the attraction if possible. But
this also sounds like an experience that is definitely, like, if you're somebody who's planning your trip for the first time, it might be something you want to wait till phase 2 or 3. Like, don't be pushing it to come with phase 1. Let whoever, annual pass holders, seasoned Disney guests, all these people, like, let them go and figure it out, and then wait for that feedback. Maybe I'm not trying to discourage you from traveling. If you have your heart set on it, you have your heart set on it. But
and that's another important thing we should make sure we know. Both of us sitting here having this discussion, we are 2 males in our 30s.
Yeah.
That I am definitely less fearful in terms of the future with COVID-19 or anything else, whereas you were taking many precautions as this was starting. You were taking many precautions very seriously, a lot quicker than a lot of people. I have, to a certain extent too, because my wife is technically someone at risk with this specifically, because she deals with severe asthma issues, and it's not rare for her to go even a week without having to use it like a breathing treatment for herself at home. So it's not like, I don't want to say that we're just like, we are the type of people who are like, oh, whatever, it's all, whatever happens with this. We are a certain demographic for sure, but we still are looking at it with that. And I don't want to be rude and say this, because it's not what people want right now. But at the end of the day too, with all of this, if you're ever uncomfortable with anything Walt Disney World is asking, whether it is eventually face masks or having cast members watch you wash your hands or sanitize all the time, if you're not comfortable with any of it, it's one of those things that it's still entertainment at the end of the day. You don't have to. I know we want to. I know we want to do that and we want to go there, but we're going to have to either follow the rules or just accept that it's not going to be something we're going to be able to do for a while. And it's tough to hear that.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that actually the other night when I was walking the dog. I was thinking that, it's already almost May, and that this is shaping up to look like the first year since the first time I went to Disneyland that I won't be making a trip out there. And you and I had Star Wars Celebration tickets, and that's technically still on, but it's one of those, well, so what if it still happens? We have to start asking ourselves the real question, do we feel comfortable getting on an airplane, staying in a hotel, and then going into a thing like, you have to ask yourself that. I don't know what months from now is going to look like, but it is a comfort level thing.
Yeah.
It's like what you said.
So, and I mean, the best thing we can say is that, we hope that these guidelines keep getting looked at over and over again, that there's that we will know more soon, I guess is exactly what I'm hoping for. I know that's what we're all hoping for, is to just know more soon. We want to know when it's going to reopen. We want to know what the plan of attack is, and hopefully we'll hear soon on it. But right now, at least we know this is what they are looking at in terms of preliminary guidelines in terms of reopening. And then there's going to be the us factor. Will guests, can they make sure that guests are keeping social distance practices in
Right.
the back of their mind? Is everyone going to continue washing their hands and sanitize? Like, that's where our responsibility comes into it too. We have to do that,
Right.
if we want to be able to get back to enjoy something that we love, like these theme parks.
Well, and think about also the workforce it takes to kind of enforce this stuff that you just said too. You talked about an employee watching to make sure someone's sanitizing, but then people making sure that people are obeying the restrictions. It's going to be a lot more customers than we've seen in a while, and a lot of those people are gone. So it's, again, it's another test and adjust process, I think. So
Yeah.
I don't want to get anybody's hopes up, but I don't think we're as close as everybody is, like, biting at the bit for. And maybe we are. Maybe they're further along than we know. I don't know, but it's like what you said. Just as long as it's not just you're making sure everybody else is staying safe, then that's the best you can do,
And I think we all want to be safe, and we all want to get back to being able to do the things that we love. And so, yeah, we have to do what's being said. We have to make sure that we keep our distance. We have to wash our hands, use hand sanitizer, face masks if necessary, and just play by the rules. I mean, one of the best things we can all do when we get back to the theme parks is there's guardrails and things you can touch all the time that
don't touch it.
if unfortunately, if you're someone who needs that extra assistance, you need to touch the handrails in order to get down a set of stairs safely or up, then absolutely, that's, you do it. But if you don't need to touch anything, don't touch anything. If you have no need to be right up against someone and breathing on their neck, don't do that. And
we've been saying that for years. And now the CDC is saying it. They finally agree with us.
Exactly. And ultimately, just be respectful of everyone. And if you feel like you do have, once this all does reopen and everything comes back, if you feel like you have a compromised immune system and you can't go to the park safely, you'll have to wait a little while. And if you feel like you might also be able to impact someone who does have a compromised system, or a cast member that's there trying to make their living, maybe decide for yourself that you shouldn't go because you don't want to put anyone else at risk too. So there's lots of things to think about and consider. But yeah, ultimately want to just reloop around to the end before we end this. I want to reloop back to where this all started, and that's that, again, the Orange County Task Force did release some of the guidelines for reopening Walt Disney World and other theme parks that are not temporary, but preliminary guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
And that, of course, is tape marking of 6 feet apart and ride attraction queues, staff to regularly wipe down surfaces at random. Phase 1 and 2 would see staff who are 65 plus encouraged to stay at home, with mandates with all employees required to wear face masks, touchless hand sanitizer at each ticketing entry and turnstiles, touchless hand sanitizer at each ride/attraction entry and exit, temperature checks for staff prior to shift, temperature 100.4, must not enter premises. All employees with flu-like symptoms advised to stay home. Wipe down of all railings and surfaces after every use. Phase 1, 50% capacity. Phase 2, 75% capacity. And with that too, still no firm reopening date, with guidelines in place, hopefully June, but still no information exactly when it will actually open up. So we all hope June 1st is where it is, but we still don't know. But was there anything else you wanted to mention, Rhino, before we wrap this up?
No, I mean, I'd just be curious which you feel based on these guidelines, which would you feel better about going to a hotel or a restaurant?
Oh, that's a tough question. I would
I think,
say a restaurant.
yeah, I was going to say because of the amount of time I guess you spend in one versus the other, right? Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's it's interesting. It's one of I just also want to convey that we can be very hopeful about the theme parks opening, but not like Craig said again, not in a selfish way where I'd rather they be closed for 6 more months if it meant safely reopening than opening tomorrow and it cost anybody any sort of harm or their life, God forbid, or anything like that. So even though we do talk in a manner about looking forward to that being open, I think you and I are the same way where I'd rather it be safe, more safely than sorry.
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm trying to say. There we go.
That
Yeah.
works. Well, that's a good place to wrap this up. So, thank you to everyone out there for watching and going through this information with us. Rhino, thank you for joining me to dissect this information and put it out there. So, we will see you again real soon with another video. So, until then, if you like the content you just saw, make sure to hit that subscribe button and then the bell so you get notified when we have new videos. Leave us lots of comments down below. Hit that thumbs up button, and we'll see you again real soon. Bye, everyone.